There are pains that live quietly, hidden behind polite smiles, soft words, or the mechanical routines of life. These pains do not demand attention. They do not announce themselves with dramatic gestures. They seep silently into the heart, shaping the very way we see the world. This is the story of one such pain, a story of a boy named Ayaan, whose tears learned to speak before anyone else ever did. Childhood shadows. Ayaan was born into a house that seemed ordinary from the outside, but inside it held an undercurrent of unspoken tension. His father, a man of few words and strict rules, believed that emotion was a weakness to be hidden. His mother, once lively and radiant, had grown quiet over the years, her smiles now fragile and fleeting. From his earliest years, Ayaan sensed the invisible walls around him. He learned to navigate them carefully, speaking only when necessary, observing when spoken to, and smiling when expected. But behind his calm eyes lay a universe of thoughts too heavy for a child to carry. School was no refuge. Ayaan's classmates saw a polite, diligent boy, but they did not see the restlessness inside him. Teachers praised his discipline, yet his notebooks contained more scribbles of worries and unanswered questions than homework solutions. At home, the silence was louder than any argument. Words hung in the air, unsaid. Ayaan watched his parents, sensing the distance between them, but never daring to voice the questions that swirled inside his mind. Why does happiness feel like someone else's story, he would ask himself. Why do people smile but not feel? He did not know that these early lessons of silent observation would become his lifelong companion. The first taste of loss. At 8 years old, Ayaan experienced his first true heartbreak. It wasn't a tragedy, not in the way adults might recognize, but it was a wound that cut deep. His best friend, his confidant, moved away suddenly. The boy who had shared his secret hiding spots, his silly jokes, and his whispered fears was gone, leaving behind an emptiness that seemed impossible to fill. That night, Ayaan sat on the staircase, staring at the ceiling as rain pattered against the windows. His heart ached in ways he had no words for. And for the first time, a tear rolled down his cheek silently. It was a tear that would teach him something essential. Not all pain demands a voice, but every tear carries a message. Adolescence, learning to hide. As he grew older, Ayaan became skilled at masking his pain. Teenagers are loud, brash, and full of emotion. He was not. He smiled at jokes he did not find funny, listened to conversations he did not understand, and nodded when expectations were placed on him. He became the dependable one, the calm one, the boy who would never cause trouble. And yet, inside, the storms raged. His heart collected every unspoken sorrow like raindrops in a jar. He learned to avoid close friendships, afraid of the inevitable loss or betrayal that seemed to follow every bond. He began keeping journals, pouring his thoughts into pages no one would read. Each entry became a lifeline, a way to survive in a world that seemed intent on ignoring his pain. If no one will hear me, I will speak to myself. The words became a mantra. The journals were secret worlds, each page a safe place where his emotions could breathe. The arrival of Zara. Life has a strange way of introducing hope in the quietest moments. For Ayaan, that hope came in the form of Zara. She was different from anyone he had ever met, vibrant, intuitive, and unafraid of emotions that others considered inconvenient. They met on a cloudy afternoon at a library, reaching for the same book. Their hands brushed, and she laughed softly, apologizing in a way that made him smile despite himself. Over time, their friendship blossomed. Zara had the rare ability to see through the walls Ayaan had built. She noticed the pauses in his sentences, the tiredness in his eyes, the hesitation in his laughter. And, without pushing, she became someone he could trust. For the first time, he spoke about things he had never voiced, the loneliness of his childhood, the silent pain of growing up too quickly, the fear of being forgotten. Each confession was met not with judgment but with understanding, and each understanding became a bridge between their hearts. "You know," she said one evening as the sun dipped below the horizon, "sometimes our tears are stronger than our words. They speak the truths we hide." her words struck him deeply. He realized that his own tears, which he had always considered weakness, were actually a language he had never learned to use. First love and heartbreak. As Ayaan and Zara grew closer, he discovered the beauty and terror of love. Their friendship slowly evolved into a bond filled with unspoken promises and quiet affection. But just as he began to feel truly seen, life intervened. Zara's family moved to another city, pursuing opportunities that Ayaan could not follow. They promised to stay in touch, but distance, as it often does, introduced silence where conversations once lived. Phone calls became shorter, messages less frequent, and slowly, the warmth of connection began to fade. Ayaan's heart felt the weight of absence more sharply than he had ever anticipated. Yet he did not allow himself to crumble completely. He had learned to survive in silence. He had learned to carry pain alone. And yet, at night, he wept. He cried not for anger, not for loss, but for the emptiness left behind by someone who had once understood him. Each tear was a whisper of grief, a story of what it meant to feel deeply in a world that rarely noticed. The burden of responsibility. Adulthood arrived quietly. Ayaan's life became a delicate balancing act. He found a career he excelled in, earned respect from peers, and maintained friendships that were polite but distant. At home, he took care of his aging parents, managing finances, responsibilities, and household needs with meticulous precision. Others admired his composure, never realizing the effort it took to maintain it. Inside, his journals remained his refuge. They became thicker with every passing year, filled with reflections, memories, regrets, and questions with no answers. His writing became a mirror for his soul, the one place where he could cry, rage, laugh, and simply be. Yet the loneliness never fully left him. Even amid achievements and recognition, Ayaan felt the subtle ache of unspoken pain. The turning point. One particularly difficult winter, after a long day at work and months of quiet isolation, Ayaan returned home exhausted. The walls of his apartment seemed smaller than usual, closing in on him. His journals lay untouched for days. He realized that he had been avoiding himself, the one person he needed to face the most. He opened his journal, pen in hand, and began to write with urgency, spilling emotions he had long ignored. The words poured out like a torrent, memories of childhood loneliness, the first heartbreak of losing a friend, the quiet love for Zara, and the constant burden of responsibility. And then, for the first time in years, he allowed himself to cry. Not quietly. Not politely. But fully. Each tear carried years of suppressed grief, fear, and longing. And in the act of crying, he felt a release, a purification that words alone could never provide. It was in that moment that Ayaan understood a profound truth. Healing begins when we allow ourselves to truly feel. Healing and understanding. The days that followed were different. Ayaan continued to write, but he also began to speak more openly with the few people he trusted. He shared fragments of his journal with close friends and discovered that honesty created connection, rather than fear. He began to see his tears not as weakness, but as a guide. They taught him to be patient with himself, to honor his own emotions, and to accept that life's difficulties were part of the human experience. He revisited memories of Zara, not with pain, but with gratitude. She had been a catalyst, a mirror reflecting his deepest self, and even though distance had separated them, her presence in his life had transformed him. A life reclaimed. Years later, Ayaan had grown into a man of quiet strength. His career flourished, his friendships were genuine, and his family life was enriched by his care and attention. Yet more importantly, he had learned to listen to himself. His journals, once secret and private, became a source of guidance. He read them and remembered the boy who had learned to hide, the adolescent who had survived loneliness, and the young man who had discovered the language of tears. He realized that pain is not something to fear or suppress. Pain is a teacher, and tears are its messenger. They remind us that we are alive, that we feel deeply, and that even in moments of silence, the heart continues to speak. Ayaan often shared this wisdom quietly with others. Don't be afraid of your tears. They are your heart speaking. Listen to them, and you will understand yourself better than anyone else ever could. And in the gentle acceptance of this truth, he found peace. The final truth. Tears had once been a secret language, a burden he thought he had to carry alone. But in allowing them to speak, Ayaan discovered connection, healing, and self-understanding. Life was never perfect. He still faced sorrow, loneliness, and challenges that brought tears to his eyes. But he now welcomed them, recognizing that they were proof of a heart that loved, felt, and endured. In the end, Ayaan learned the ultimate lesson of silent pain. Pain is inevitable. Tears are necessary. And listening to both is the path to a life fully lived. He was no longer the boy who watched life from the sidelines. He was a man who had learned to hear the whispers of his own soul, and in doing so, had finally found a voice for the quietest parts of himself. And that, he realized, was a kind of happiness no one could ever take away.